Welcome back to Unplugged Headlines. I can't believe it, we're on episode 20 already.
Wow, that's right, 20.
20. And today we're going deep, as you suggested, into global payments.
Oh, yes.
Really how businesses are navigating this whole world. It's really kind of wild out there, right?
It is. It's a fascinating and complex landscape.
It really is. And today we're going to be looking specifically at a blog post that outlines a pretty intriguing approach using something called FBO accounts.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we kind of take for granted. Like when you buy something online or you send money to a friend,
Right.
you just expect it to work, right? But behind the scenes, there's this incredibly complex system, especially for businesses
Seriously.
that are working across borders. I mean, we're talking about managing different currencies, regulations,
Right.
security, all kinds of stuff, multiple continents.
Yeah, and it's so much more than just, taking dollars and converting them to euros or yen or anything like that.
Exactly.
Right. So before we even get into any of the potential solutions out there, can you maybe walk us through some of the specific challenges
Yeah.
that make global payments, such a headache for businesses?
Yeah, I think a good analogy is to imagine like sending a package,
Okay.
but each city has its own postal service with different rules about what you can ship and different size mailboxes.
Oh, wow.
That's kind of what it's like for businesses with global payments.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, you've got different payment systems, currencies, regulations to manage,
Right.
compliance issues. It's a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like a multi-dimensional puzzle that's constantly changing.
Yeah, exactly.
And the blog post uses some interesting real-world examples
Yeah, it does.
to kind of illustrate how complex it can be, right?
Yeah, so for example, let's look at Europe. You've got the SEPA network, which makes things easier within the Eurozone.
Right.
But as soon as you go beyond those borders, things get complicated.
Right.
So imagine you're a business handling payments between France and Poland and Switzerland.
Okay, so you're dealing with the euro, the Zloty, and
Exactly, and the Swiss franc.
the Swiss franc.
Yeah, so suddenly you're dealing with SEPA for euro transactions, Poland's domestic system for the zloty,
Right.
and Switzerland's system for Swiss francs.
Yeah.
And then on top of all that, you've got the different regulations in each country.
So even in a region that seems pretty unified, at least on the surface, businesses really need a strategy
Absolutely.
for navigating these nuances. Now, what about a region like the UK, which has obviously seen some big regulatory shifts recently?
Right, the UK is a great example because of Brexit.
Right.
Leaving the EU's payment framework has created new challenges for businesses,
Yeah.
especially when they're dealing with the EU, because now those transactions are considered international payments,
Oh, I see.
which often means longer processing times
Yeah.
and higher fees.
Oh, wow. So it seems like just keeping up with the changes in the global payments landscape would be a full-time job.
It really was.
Let alone running a business, right? And that kind of brings us to the heart of today's deep dive, these FBO accounts.
Okay.
So can you just explain what they are and why they're generating so much buzz in the business world?
FBO stands for benefit, and it's basically a way for businesses to hold and manage funds for their clients
Okay.
securely and compliantly in different countries.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of like a global network of virtual bank accounts
Oh, that makes sense.
tailored to each region.
So it's like a Swiss Army knife, but for finances.
Exactly.
Okay. So, but the blog post talks about how traditionally setting these up has been a really complex process.
It has been very complex, yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, traditionally you had to set up separate banking relationships in each country.
Oh, wow.
You had to deal with multiple layers of approval, integrate all these different systems. It was very costly and time-consuming,
And time-consuming, yeah.
especially for smaller businesses.
Right.
It was often out of reach.
That makes sense. So is that where this platform called Ahrvo Network comes in?
It is.
Because the blog post seems to present them as a potential solution, a potential game changer.
That's right. Ahrvo aims to simplify this whole process of opening and managing FBO accounts globally,
Okay?
making it much easier for businesses to handle international payments and expand their reach. They're essentially a platform that connects businesses to a network of banking partners in over 150 countries,
Wow.
making it much more accessible even for businesses that are just starting out.
And that's what's so interesting to me, right? Because we've laid out the problem. The global payments puzzle is complex,
Yeah.
challenging for businesses to solve on their own.
Right.
We've got a potential solution, Ahrvo Network.
Yeah.
But the question is, how does it actually work?
That's a great question, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll explore how Ahrvo Network is using technology, strategic partnerships to make all of this happen.
Right, this is already shaping up to be a really insightful deep dive.
Yeah.
I'm eager to dig into the specifics of Ahrvo Network. Stay with us.
Stay tuned. So, before the break, we were talking about those challenges with global payments and how FBO accounts can potentially streamline things.
Right.
But what I find really interesting about Ahrvo Network is that they've got this approach that supports businesses no matter what stage of global expansion they're at.
Yeah, that makes sense. Not every business is, a huge multinational corporation.
Exactly.
Right, so let's break it down a little bit.
Okay.
Where does a business typically start when they're first kind of dipping their toes into that global market?
Well, the blog post calls it phase one, initial cross-border capabilities.
Okay.
And at this stage, most businesses are mainly serving domestic clients who just happen to have some international payment needs.
So like maybe a small online retailer who starts getting orders from other countries.
Yeah, exactly like that.
So they're not quite ready to set up shop overseas or
Right,
anything.
but
They need a way to handle those international transactions.
yeah, they need a system.
What are some of the biggest hurdles for them at this stage?
Well, the most obvious one is accepting payments in different currencies.
Right.
But then they also have to figure out how to manage those funds securely and compliantly.
Of course.
And they want to keep costs down, too.
So it's like this balancing act between expanding their reach,
Yeah,
but also keeping everything streamlined and cost-effective.
exactly.
So how does Ahrvo Network help simplify things for businesses that are just starting out like that?
So what they do is they give businesses instant access to this global network of payment systems.
Okay.
Things like SWIFT, SEPA, faster payments, all without the business having to set up separate banking relationships in every country.
Oh, wow.
And they manage all of that through their platform.
So that takes a lot of the headache away.
Oh, exactly. And they also offer these multi-currency accounts so businesses can hold and manage funds in over 50 different currencies.
That's huge, especially for a business that's just starting out.
Yeah, it really is.
They can tap into these big networks without getting bogged down in all the bureaucracy.
Right.
So what happens then when a business starts to grow
Yeah.
and expand their operations to multiple regions?
So that's phase two, what they call multi-region
And
expansion.
multi-region expansion.
And now the volume of transactions is going up, the range of currencies is expanding, they're dealing with all these different regulations in each region.
But it gets more and more complex.
It does, yeah. The stakes are higher, the margin for error is smaller.
For sure. So what does Ahrvo offer to help businesses navigate this more demanding phase of growth?
Well, one of their biggest advantages is their onboarding process.
Okay.
Once a business is onboarded, it's really easy for them to expand into new markets without having to go through that whole compliance process all over again.
So they're not starting from scratch every time.
Exactly. They can basically unlock new regions with just a few clicks.
So it's kind of like a financial passport then.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
That lets you move seamlessly between different markets.
And to handle all that added complexity, Ahrvo gives them sophisticated tools for managing all those multi-currency transactions.
Okay.
Thinking like automated treasury management and intelligent payment routing.
So they're making sure that every transaction is as cost-effective and efficient as possible.
Exactly.
It sounds like they're not just addressing the immediate challenges, but also looking ahead to what the business might need as it keeps growing.
Yeah, they really understand that global expansion is a journey.
Right.
And they've built their platform to support businesses every step of the way.
This is all super insightful, but I'm curious about what happens when a business reaches a truly global scale?
Yeah.
Like, what does that final stage of expansion look like?
Well, the blog post calls this phase 3, the global payment ecosystem.
Global payment ecosystem. Okay.
And at this point, businesses need enterprise-grade solutions that can handle huge volumes of transactions, real-time processing, 247 operations across all time zones.
So it's a whole other level of sophistication at that point.
It is, yeah.
Are FBO accounts even still relevant at this stage, or is it a totally different ballgame?
They're still relevant, but obviously the scale and the complexity are way bigger.
Sure.
So what Ahrvo does is they offer these multi-level account hierarchies to manage all those complex relationships.
Okay.
API-driven automation for seamless payment flows and really robust security and risk management systems that are built for enterprise-level operations.
So it's almost like they're enabling businesses to operate with the financial infrastructure of a global bank
Yeah.
without actually having to become one.
You could say that they're giving businesses the power to create these really sophisticated, client-focused banking programs that are tailored to their specific needs regardless of where they are in the world.
That raises an interesting question about the impact of all of this, because the blog post mentions how FBO accounts can actually be a revenue opportunity for businesses?
Yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. So Ahrvo Network lets businesses create customized fee structures for things like account issuance and treasury management.
Okay.
So imagine you're a platform that connects businesses across borders. You
Right.
could actually generate revenue by offering FBO accounts to your users
Oh, I see.
and charging a small fee for the convenience and efficiency that they provide.
So it's not just about streamlining payments then.
No.
It's also about opening up new possibilities for businesses to grow and generate revenue.
Exactly.
This is fascinating stuff, but I think we're getting close to the end of our deep dive here.
Yeah, let's wrap things up in the next segment
Okay.
and leave our listeners with a few final thoughts.
Welcome back to Unplugged Headlines. We've been taking a look at the wild world of global payments and how businesses are finding their way, and how Ahrvo is using these FBO accounts to make things, well, a bit smoother and more accessible.
Yeah, and we saw how their approach is really tailored to each business, wherever they are in their journey.
Yeah, not one size fits all, right?
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'd like to hear your perspective on the larger impact of this approach.
Okay.
The blog post talks about Ahrvo not just as a service provider, but as a partner
Yeah.
for businesses who are dealing with global finance. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a really important point to make. Ahrvo isn't just giving you tools.
Right.
They're providing actual expertise guidance. They're helping businesses understand the specifics of each market, the ins and outs of regulations, and really helping them create a winning financial strategy.
So they're like a guide in this constantly changing world.
Yeah, exactly.
And thinking about that, what could this mean for global commerce as a whole? Could this create a more level playing field?
That's a really interesting question. I think by making these cross-border payments simpler and giving everyone access to these sophisticated financial tools, Ahrvo is definitely lowering the barriers to entry for businesses. And that could lead to more competition, more innovation, and a global economy that's just more connected and dynamic.
That's exciting to think about. For our listeners who are dealing with global payments, what would be your one key takeaway from this deep dive?
I would say don't try to do it alone. There are solutions out there to help. Find a partner who really gets what you need, who can give you the right tools and support to succeed.
That's great advice. And it seems like Ahrvo, with these FBO accounts and the way they help businesses at each stage, they could be that partner.
Definitely could be.
This has been a really insightful conversation. Thanks for sharing your expertise with us.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, we hope you found this deep dive into global payments and FBO accounts helpful and interesting. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those questions coming. We'll see you next time.